Today, we're diving into one of the most dramatic trials in history. But forget what you know about courtroom dramas. This wasn't about theft or murder, not in the usual sense. This was a trial about ideas. It was a showdown where the defendant was a philosopher, and in a way, philosophy itself was on the stand. We're talking about Plato's Apology of Socrates, the incredible story of a man who was given a choice: stop thinking or die.
So let's just jump right in with a question for you. And I want you to really mull this over for a second. What is worse, to do something unjust to someone else or to have someone do something unjust to you? It's a tough one, right? Our gut instinct might pull us in a couple of different directions. Well, this isn't just a hypothetical puzzle. This is the exact kind of question a philosopher threw at a jury of 501 of his fellow citizens more than 2,400 years ago while he was on trial for his life.
And this was his answer, and it was completely radical. For Socrates, the man on trial, the single most important thing in the universe was the state of your soul, your character, your integrity. See, for him, suffering an injustice, as awful as it is, doesn't damage you. It doesn't make you a bad person, but committing one, doing something you know is wrong, that, he said, corrupts you from the inside out. It's like a poison to your soul. This one powerful idea is the key to his entire defense, a defense so bold that his student, Plato, wrote it all down for us in the book we now call the Apology. So you have to be asking, how on earth did it come to this? Why would Athens, the city that gave us democracy, the birthplace of Western philosophy, turn around and put its most famous thinker on trial for his life? Well, to get the trial, you have to get the city. And this was not a happy, stable Athens. This was a city in crisis. Let's do a quick rewind. In 404 BC, Athens gets absolutely crushed by its rival, Sparta, ending this long, horrible war. Right after that, there's this nightmarish period of rule by a group of tyrants. So by 399 BC, when Socrates is hauled into court, yeah, democracy is back, but the city is jumpy. It's traumatized, it's paranoid, and it's really suspicious of anyone who rocks the boat. And in that kind of atmosphere, a guy who walks around asking uncomfortable questions, well, he suddenly looks very, very dangerous.
So what were the official charges? They look a little strange to us now, but they were deadly serious then. First, corrupting the youth. This basically meant he was teaching young people to question authority, to question their parents, the government, everything. And second, impiety. This was a huge deal. They accused him of not believing in the city's gods, and even worse, of making up his own. In a place like Athens, where religion and patriotism were completely intertwined, this was basically an act of treason.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. How does Socrates defend himself? He doesn't call a bunch of witnesses, he doesn't bring his family into court to cry and beg for mercy, which was pretty standard back then. No. Instead, he tells a story. And he claims that his entire life of questioning people wasn't his idea at all. He was on a mission from a god.
And the story starts here, at the oracle at Delphi, pretty much the most sacred spot in the whole Greek world. A friend of Socrates goes there and asks the oracle a simple question: is anyone wiser than Socrates? And the answer comes back loud and clear: no. Now when Socrates hears this, he's completely baffled. He's famous for saying he doesn't know anything, so he figures that God must be speaking in a riddle, and he makes it his life's mission to figure out what it means.
So he becomes a kind of philosophical detective. He goes to all the people in Athens who have a reputation for being wise. He starts with the politicians. He asks them about justice, and he finds out they're full of hot air. Then he goes to the poets. They write incredible things, but they can't even explain their own poems. Finally, he talks to the artisans and craftsmen. And sure, they're experts at what they do, but they make the mistake of thinking that because they know how to build a chair, they also know the meaning of life.
And that's when it clicks. That's the solution to the riddle. Socrates realizes his wisdom wasn't that he had all the answers. It was that he was the only one who understood just how little he actually knew. While everyone else was walking around pretending to be an expert, Socrates was honest about his own ignorance. And that, right there, is the core of his philosophy. True wisdom starts when you admit, I know that I know nothing. And this discovery led to his famous, or maybe infamous, method. Step 1 is irony. He'd pretend to be clueless and just ask questions until the person he was talking to would tie themselves in knots and realize they didn't know what they were talking about. Step 2 he called maieutic, which is related to the Greek word for midwifery. His mom was a midwife, actually. He said he wasn't a teacher putting ideas in people's heads. He was a midwife helping them give birth to the ideas that were already inside them. You can imagine how exciting that was for the young people, and how infuriating it was for the powerful people he was embarrassing.
So Socrates has his divine mission, he has his method, but what did he think his actual job was in the city? He explains it with one of the most brilliant and unforgettable metaphors in the history of ideas.
He says you should picture Athens as this big, beautiful, noble horse. Powerful, but
getting a little lazy, a little sleepy, a little complacent. And he, Socrates, is a gadfly. You know, a buzzing, annoying little insect that the gods sent to bite the horse, to sting it, to keep it awake. He literally saw his job as being a pest, a necessary annoyance to keep the city from getting lazy and to force it to constantly think about what it was doing.
I mean, just think about the sheer nerve of this. Socrates is standing in court, fighting for his life, and he tells the jury, "You know all my annoying questions that you hate so much? That's the best thing that's ever happened to this city. You should be thanking me." He genuinely believed that by being a critic, by forcing people to think harder, he was being the best citizen he could possibly be. That the truest patriot is the one who challenges the state to be better.
And what was the message this gadfly was always buzzing about? It was a direct attack on what most people, then and now, spend their lives chasing. He told them to care about virtue before they cared about money, to care about truth before they worried about their reputation, and most of all, to take care of their soul before they worried about their body or their stuff. Yeah, not exactly a message designed to win a popularity contest.
Okay, so let's get to the end of the trial. This is where it all comes to a head. Socrates has made his case. He hasn't backed down, he hasn't apologized, he's defended his entire way of life. Now, the jury has to vote, and his commitment to his principles is about to face the ultimate test.
The verdict comes in guilty. But, whoa, look at the numbers. It was 280 to 221. It was incredibly close. This tells you something really important. Athens was completely torn. This wasn't a lynch mob. This was a city that was deeply divided about its most famous and most annoying philosopher.
And let's break it down even more. Just look at this number, 30. That's it. If just 30 jurors had voted the other way, Socrates would have walked out a free man. It just goes to show you how controversial this whole thing was. He was condemned by a razor-thin margin in a city that was basically at war with itself.
And now we get to maybe the most defiant moment in the whole trial. Athenian law says that Socrates can now suggest an alternative punishment, maybe a fine or being exiled from the city. But no, Socrates says that for the great service he's done for Athens, he should be rewarded with free meals for life at the city's expense. You know, the honor they gave to Olympic champions. It was the ultimate sarcastic move, and it absolutely sealed his fate.
The jury, completely insulted, votes again, and this time they vote for death by a much bigger margin. But Socrates is totally calm. He explains to them why he could never just be quiet and stop doing philosophy. Because, he says, the unexamined life is not worth living for a human being. For him, a life where you don't think, where you don't reflect, where you don't ask why, that's not really living at all.
And so he accepts his death sentence with complete peace. He tells the jury, hey, none of us really knows what happens when you die, so to be afraid of it is just another kind of ignorance. It's pretending you know it's a bad thing. For all we know, it could be the best thing ever. His calm acceptance was the final, perfect demonstration of his entire philosophy. Don't pretend you know what you don't know.
So why are we still talking about this 2,400 years later? What makes it a classic? Well, it ticks all the boxes. First, it basically defines what the philosophical life is all about. It's the ultimate argument for why we need critical thinkers. Second, it asks questions that are still so relevant. What do you do when your conscience tells you one thing and the law tells you another? And finally, it doesn't give you any easy answers. It just sparks more debate about justice, truth, and wisdom, which is what great philosophy always does. In the end, Plato's Apology isn't just some historical document. It's a challenge. It's a living question that echoes from that courtroom right into our own lives. Socrates had to choose between what was comfortable and what was true, between an easy life and an examined one. So I'll just leave you with this. The next time you have to choose between what's convenient and what's right, between what's easy and what's true, what will your defense, your apology be?